This is probably one of the rare videos you're gonna see here on my channel. I don't normally do videos in English, but this is more like a global video. This is my personal channel where I talk about a lot of things, and I've been wanting to do at least once or twice, when the opportunity arises, obviously, a video that talks about what I'm learning and something that everybody can take advantage of. First, I want to start by what I learned from the books. I read a lot of books in 2018. I'm actually addicted to reading. So right now I'm finishing this one, and I'm addicted to books. So I read a lot of things. Some of the books that I read are good. Some of the books that I read are not as good. But I'm gonna try to give you a lesson, or at least one nugget out of every book I read in 2018. So the first one was The History of Airbnb. The History of Airbnb. That was really good, by an author called Lee Gallagher. And one thing she said in the book that really caught my attention is this: the pessimists are generally right. The people who are pessimists, they're generally right. But the people who change the world are the optimists. So that caught my attention, because that's true. Like, you can be right, but that doesn't mean you're going to change the world with a pessimist way of thinking. So that was the lesson of the book. Obviously, Airbnb. If you don't know what Airbnb is, you can get out of the cave. You read it. It's the time. Get out of the cave. Get out of the cave. Airbnb is massive. They're changing the landscape of the hospitality business, and throughout the book they have so many good lessons, but this is one of them. The other one was The Icarus Illusion by Seth Godin. A really good book, a really interesting book. And one thing he says in the book that caught my attention was, if there are not enough people doubting what you're doing, you're probably not pushing yourself. If there's not enough people doubting what you're doing, you're not pushing yourself beyond your limits, or at least to your limits. So you're not making any difference. You're not making a dent in the world, like he likes to say. So that's pretty good. Third one, From Zero to One, Peter Thiel, the guy who founded PayPal. Amazing. He says, don't choose your career based on what you love. Choose your career based on what adds value to the world. Really interesting. Why? Because we're living in a time where the schools are not preparing our kids for the future. Why? Because they don't know what the future holds. No one knows. You know, that we live in the revolution of the machines. We don't know. So I would advise that you read this book. This is a really good book. The difference between 1 to 100 and 0 to 1. Amazing explanation. So From 0 to 1, Peter Thiel. The other one is a book about parenting. So I don't know if you want to read about parenting. I'm a father of one, to be a father of two. So it's really interesting. Effective Parenting in a Defective World. Effective Parenting in a Defective World by Chip Ingram. The lesson is, do not focus on what you don't want them to become. Focus on the positive. Oh, that's so basic. Yeah, it is basic. But the reality is, as parents, a lot of times we focus on what we don't want them to become or do. Don't do this, don't do that, this is bad influence, and then we end up focusing on the wrong things. Maybe your kid is not good at math, but they're good in English. So put them to write. They're good in Portuguese, put them to write. Let them write, let them read. My daughter is addicted to reading. Probably because I'm addicted to reading, but that's a good thing. So what do? We pay her to read. Yeah, that's right. I learned that lesson from John Maxwell. We pay her to read. So what do? We say every book you read, you get $2. So you can put your money aside, and we're teaching her how to, save money and invest money. What's an investment? What's an expenditure? And she's loving it. And right now, she loves reading comic books. So I don't care whatever she reads, man. If she wants to read recipes, that's fine, as long as she reads. So that's the point. Focus on the positive. And then I read a book about preaching. I am a preacher, believe it or not. I know it doesn't look like. But I read a book about preaching called Expository Preaching by Haddon A. Robinson. Really good. If you're not a preacher in a church, but if you speak in public, it's a good book to read. As well as the books about TED, Chris Anderson. I read that one. I think it's on the list. Carmel Gallo, something like this. Another one about TED is here somewhere. Yeah, Carmine Gallo, it's here somewhere on the list for this year. So read about public speaking. But this is really good. The lessons that he shares in the book, basically one nugget, he says like this: focus on the main point, the big attention, one idea. We all know about that. If you speak in public, you've heard that thing. But then he says this: introducing a sermon is like taking off on a plane. So it takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of fuel, it takes a lot of parts moving together. It's like a plane, taking off. Concluding a sermon is like landing a plane. So introducing a sermon is like, taking a plane off the ground. And concluding a sermon is like landing a plane. Both take a lot of energy, both take a lot of concentration, a lot of moving parts. But if done well, it provides a pleasant experience. Wow. Both take a lot of energy, but if it's done well, it provides a pleasant experience. So take that one for your speeches and whatever. So Freakonomics, next book, Freakonomics by Steve Lewitt and Stephen Dubner. Amazing. Conventional wisdom is generally wrong. That's the lesson. Conventional wisdom is generally wrong. So if you try to figure out something about a problem that you gotta solve, if your first point of reference is what's common knowledge, you're probably going to make the same mistakes as everybody else. Don't do that. Common wisdom is generally wrong. Knowing what you measure and how to measure makes the world seem less complicated. The reason why we think the problems are too difficult, we can't solve poverty, we can't solve misery, we can't solve diseases, is because we don't know what and how we're measuring. So, in whatever problem you find yourself in, and Freakonomics is a good book for that. There's a series of books and podcasts about Freakonomics, but this is one of them. Freakonomics is a good one. So, Letters to the Church, it's another book about church that I read, Francis Chan, Letters to the Church, and I understand if you're not a church person, this is going to take me 30 seconds, you can skip that part, but if you are a church person or if you're interested, here's the lessons. The Letters to the Church, Francis Chan, the latest book he wrote. Amazing author, by the way, you can read everything about him, it's really easy to read. The church we see and the church we read about are two different things. Wow, I've already said this so many times, I'm tired of saying it. The church that we read about in the Bible and the church that we see today are two different things. The angels are in awe of the church and we are yawning at the church. What is going on? The angels are constantly in awe of the church. They look down on the church, if heaven is a geographical location anyway. They look down on the church and they say, wow. And we go in the church and we say, you know what I mean? Like, it is just weird. It's just not working. So, why is that? I think Francis Chan nails it when he says, ignorance is better or feels better than disobedience. Ignorance feels better than disobedience. And that's true in the whole of society, not just church. People don't want to know the truth, because if they know the truth, they will be free and they will be held accountable. That's the problem. It's not the freedom that comes with the truth, it's the accountability. If you know the truth, you will be set free. You will be set free. That's John 8:32. Great, amazing. The truth is Jesus. Awesome. We believe in that. But the problem is not the freedom that comes with the truth. The problem is the accountability. Because if you know the truth and you will be set free, you will be held accountable. That's the problem. So the worst thing you can do to anyone is to preach the gospel to them. And obviously, I'm joking. This is a joke. But what I'm saying is, with great power comes great responsibility, said Uncle Ben once.
Remember, with great power comes great responsibility.
So, here we go. Another book, Mere Christianity. Mere Christianity was a mere disappointment for me. I know it's C.S. Lewis, and a lot of people love C.S. Lewis. They go like, "Oh my gosh, how can you badmouth C.S. Lewis?" And I don't know if I wouldn't say it's the season he wrote in, because it's not that long ago. So most of the things that we get from the 18th and 19th century, even 20th century, is just like people had access to wisdom. So, and he was a wise guy. Like you see from all the other works, he was an amazingly wise guy. C.S. Lewis wrote so many things that impacted our world, like Narnia, the Chronicles of Narnia. Man, oh my gosh, amazing. But Mere Christianity, a mere disappointment. They say it's an apologetic book. It's not. It's just a compound of interviews he gave on the radio. So, I mean, You can read it if you want, but don't waste your time. But that's my opinion anyway. Another great book that's not a church book. Oh my gosh, probably one of the best books I've ever read. It's not here on my shelf. I don't know where it is. Originals by Adam Grant. Originally, I gave this book as a gift to a guy, a good friend of mine. I said, look, read this book. It has everything to do with you. He never read it for a year. I took it back. I stole it from him because I don't borrow books and I don't lend books. I either give it away or I take it from people. But I mean, if you're gonna come to me and say, look, I'm gonna lend you my book, no, you won't. I'm gonna steal it. I'll never give it back. So that's just me. I'm addicted. That's the problem. Originals by Adam Grant. Amazing book. Probably one of the best books I read in 2018. Here's the deal. Here's the nugget. Practice makes it perfect, not original. Oh wow. Practice makes it perfect. Yeah, not original. You know, the great musicians, they're not great because they are perfect. They're great because they're originals. The Mozarts, the Beethovens, that guy, the famous violinist, I don't know his name, but anyway, they're great because they are original. Brilliant musicians learn in school to execute the songs and not to compose. Composition is a different thing. Another thing he said in the book is, speak as if you're right, listen as if you're wrong. This is a quote from Carl Week. So, speak as if you're right, listen as if you are wrong. Amazing exercise of boldness and humility at the same time. You should be bold when you're putting your point across, and you should be humble when you're listening. So amazing. But stick with the first one. Practice makes it perfect, not original. You decide what you want to be, you decide how you want to do it, and then follow that path. Another church book, Preaching the Cross by Mark Dever. Amazing book, really good in my experience for what I'm doing. Is that he says this: when you give an account of your congregation, which you may think is small, trust me, you will think you have had enough in your lifetime. This quote is more for pastors like me. Like, I'm a young pastor, I'm 35, my church is 3 years old. Very often, I look at a Sunday in attendance when it goes low, and I think, what did I do wrong? Why isn't the church growing? Why isn't this big? Why isn't this booming? And the reality is, it doesn't have to. You know, like, you just gotta be faithful. You don't have to be big, you just gotta be faithful. And the whole thing about being relevant and all that, like, that's rubbish. Like, we came up with that, we invented that. That has nothing to do with what Jesus said. If Jesus embarked on the journey of being relevant and hip, he would have never made it, because Jesus spent 3 years on earth and 12 people followed him, and those 12, every single one of them ran away except for one, and I suspect that he didn't run away because Jesus' mother grabbed him by the arm. So I mean, like, just my crazy theories, but the reality is Jesus would never cut. He would never cut in our methods, in our criteria. So don't fuss about it. And the reality is, man, if you're faithful for your 20, 30, 40 years of ministry, it makes no difference if it was big or small. The difference is, was it faithful? Did you preach the cross? Did you preach Jesus? Did you did you introduce Jesus to people? Did you preach grace? Were you sound? That's the point. Anything else doesn't matter. So stick with it. Start with Why, Simon Sinek. I told you it was going to take long, but I'm almost finishing. Start with Why, Simon Sinek. Amazing book. By the way, anything you watch, read, listen to, coming from Simon Sinek is amazing. Okay, Start with Why, great book. Leaders Eat Last, the second book, amazing, so good. I read it, it's somewhere. I think I read it in 2017. Now he wrote a book, The Infinite Game. It's based on another book by a theologian, believe it or not, by a theologian called The Theory of Finite and Infinite Games, which is a very complicated book, very heavy. I've read parts of it and I'm going to finish this year. But all that to say, Simon Sinek, amazing author. Start with Why. You should read it. If you haven't read it, again, come out of the cave. Here's the nugget. If I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. That's a quote by Henry Ford. So Henry Ford said, if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. In other words, if you let's just translate it to 21st century Steve Jobs. People don't know what they want. We tell them what they want. The customers don't know what they want. We tell them what they want. We come up with the trends. We're the early adopters. So we come up, we're the innovators. We're not the early adopters, we're the innovators. If you're watching this video, it's very likely you're either an entrepreneur or leading a church or an organization, or you just like me, which is very difficult to believe. But anyway, next book, Ted by Chris Anderson. Needs no introduction. Chris Anderson's the guy who curates the content for TED, the big conference. Oh, I don't know what TED is. Oh, I don't know what TED is. Oh, I don't know what TED is. Okay, come out of the cave again. TED, the book by Chris Anderson, very good. It says it's lots of great stuff, but the one thing I took from the book, the nugget, is the master line of your speech is the one nugget out of it. The master line. So when you're coming up with a speech, a preaching, a sermon, whatever, if you're gonna speak in public, center your whole thing, everything around one point. Don't go like, I'm gonna give you 3 points, 3 ideas, 3 reasons. Who cares? 1 point, 1 idea, 1 reason, 1 conversation. Circle everything around that one thing. That will make it easier to understand, more applicable, more replicable, and again, Chris Anderson needs no introduction. It's been like, I think, nearly 20 years of curating TED, so he knows what he's talking about. The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. Another book, I'm almost finishing, 2 books to finish. The Miracle Morning. The nugget, things don't change. We change. Bam. Things do not change. We change. That's a quote, again, by Henry David Thoreau, if I said it wrong. If I said it right. And the other one is motivation is what gets you started. Habit is what keeps you going. That's a Jim Rohn quote. Old school. Going old school all the way. Motivation gets you started, but habits keep you going. So those are the books from 2018. A book summary. Get your hand in 3 of these books and read it. I'm sure you're gonna benefit out of it. All right. So again, thanks for watching. If you've watched until this point, it's because you either took advantage of the content or you really like me, which is really difficult to believe. The only person that I know for sure that like me are that little girl at the back and my wife in the other room. Those are the 2 ones that really like me for who I am. So if you're one of them, it's amazing to have you here. All right, thank you very much for watching, and keep an eye out for the other videos. God bless.